Today, dear listeners, we dive into a story that makes the blood run cold in one's veins, a story of relentless hatred, of cold-blooded revenge, and of a strike that throws the arrogant Russian machinery into the dust. Imagine on January 5th, 2026, at 6:10 a.m. a Russian LNG export terminal worth $650 million doesn't just disappear in an explosion like you know from the movies. No, it ceases to exist. Steel concrete pipelines, fire suppression systems, and the entire fuel infrastructure, everything shredded in an inferno that sends the Russian guards into a panic. While Moscow stares blindly at chaos elsewhere, Ukraine strikes a coordinated multi-domain attack that rewrites the rules of maritime warfare. 6 unmanned boats unleash a 30-strong air force breaking through the ridiculously overrated Russian layers of defense and wiping out one of the Kremlin's most valuable energy assets in just over 2 minutes. What follows is the exact account of this masterstroke by Ukrainian heroes against the incompetent Russian tyrants, an act of pure retribution that raises the hatred between the camps to a new level. Can you feel the tension? The wind of the Sea of Azov carries the smell of burning steel and broken Russian arrogance. On January 5th, 2026, at 6:10 a.m. in Terriuk, Russia, an LNG export terminal on the Sea of Azov suffers catastrophic destruction. Approximately $650 million of gas infrastructure, steel loading arms, pier columns, electrical systems, and storage facilities are destroyed or irreparably damaged. The fireball initially reaches a height of about 5 meters and then escalates into a thermal event visible even from Crimea, a glowing mushroom that tears the sky apart and leaves Russian soldiers in mortal fear. This was not the work of sabotage teams, cruise missiles, or a naval fleet. No, it was the result of unmanned systems deployed secretly, built up in layers, and executed with surgical precision. Hours earlier, at approximately 4:20 a.m., the Sea of Azov lies in deep darkness. Visibility is minimal. Russian radar coverage around Terriuk is active but pathetically weakened, a testament to the inefficiency of the Russian military, which relies on outdated technologies. 48 hours earlier, a Ukrainian F-16 strike had interrupted the rail infrastructure in the region. This blow did more than just cut logistics. It destroyed Russian command structures, diverted their attention to imaginary threats, and left their S-400 batteries, those supposedly invincible monsters, desperately looking out for air raids. The Russians, in their typical arrogance, expected another airstrike, not a maritime infiltration from below. Their hatred for Ukraine blinds them, making them blind to the clever maneuvers of Kyiv's defenders. At this moment, a single ship appears on Russian radar, the Star of Monrovia, a 15,000-ton freighter under the Liberian flag, traveling at about 12 knots. Declared cargo: winter wheat for Turkey. On radar, it looks harmless, typical for the Russian operators who, in their laziness and corruption, do not look deeper. Radar reports position and speed, not intentions. The Russian underwater sensor networks near the Kerch Bridge are already degraded, sabotaged by earlier Ukrainian operations that give the Russians sleepless nights. Patrol boats were redirected, responding to false alarms. The Russians are staring at the front door while the blow comes from behind. At about 4:25 a.m., the Star of Monrovia maneuvers into position about 22 miles from the release point. Cargo doors just above the waterline open. Gravity takes care of the rest. 6 unmanned surface vehicles, Mura 55 platforms, glide into the water. These are not simple one-way attack drones, but modular motherships, true marvels of Ukrainian engineering that put Russian junk to shame. Mounted on each deck, a custom flight platform with 4 FPV quadcopters, rotors folded, locked, and armed with shaped charges capable of piercing armored steel. In addition to the 6 primary surface warheads, this configuration creates a total of 30 separate munitions, an armada of death that will give Russian defenders nightmares. Each Mura carries a fiber-optic communication spool at the stern, about 7.5 miles long, thinner than a human hair. This link transmits real-time video directly to Ukrainian operators in Odessa. Russian electronic warfare systems, including the Murmansk BN jammers, rage across the entire radio spectrum, but the fiber optic makes them ridiculously irrelevant. Radio frequency interference cannot affect physical optical cables. For nearly an hour, the 6 Mura vehicles move forward at about 20 knots. The fiber optic link remains stable. Live video streams continuously. About 12 miles from the shore, the spools are exhausted. As planned, the Mura platforms automatically switch to a secondary communication mode, a localized encrypted mesh radio network. This switch immediately changes the tactical situation. Unlike fiber optics, radio emissions can be detected passively. On board the Russian patrol ship Sergei Kotov, passive electronic sensors register high-frequency anomalies. Several contacts at about 270 degrees are detected. The electronic warfare officer triggers the alarm, the surprise is over, and Russian pride takes a hit. The element of surprise ends abruptly. The Sergei Kotov and a second ship of Project 22,160 maneuver, aggressively swinging their bows toward the threat. A K630 rotary cannon spin up capable of firing 5,000 rounds per minute with 30mm ammunition, but against Ukrainian cleverness they seem like toys. In Odessa, Ukrainian operators observed the reaction in real time. With the discovery confirmed, the decision is made: launch the air component. 24 FPV drones ignite almost simultaneously from the decks of the Mura vehicles. Magnetic latches release. One after another, the quadcopters take off into the night, creating the characteristic high-pitched buzz of small electric rotors. For the Russian sailors on deck, the visual is unprecedented. Instead of sea drones heading for the hull, the sea itself seems to generate an air attack, a nightmare that only fuels the Russian hatred of Ukraine as they watch helplessly. The first wave of 8 FPV drones levels out at about 200 feet altitude, accelerating to around 90 miles per hour. Their target's not the hulls, but sensors, radar arrays, and fire control systems. The Sergei Kotov immediately opens fire. Tracer ammunition fills the sky. The leading FP5 is instantly destroyed. A second is shredded in the air. 2 drones lost without causing damage. The Russian captain maintains disciplined ship control, keeping the bow to the threat to maximize radar coverage, and gun arcs tactically sound, but useless in swarm warfare. Swarm warfare does not require perfection, but volume. While the Kotov focuses forward, FPV drones 3 and 4 execute a low-flight maneuver, dropping to about 10 feet above the waterline below the radar depression angle. They approach undetected. FPV-3 hits the bridge wing. The shape charge penetrates the steel plate, deactivating the fire control system. The ship does not sink, but the AK-630 goes silent. The ship is effectively blind, a humiliating blow for the Russian Navy, which presents itself as invincible. FPV-4 uses the gap and targets the Panzer air defense module aft. The drone penetrates the missile tubes. The secondary explosion destroys about $15 million of air defense hardware. Of the 8 drones in the first wave, only 3 survive, 5 are destroyed, but the patrol ship is burning, drifting, and blind. A warning transmission reaches the shore, and in the Terriuk LNG complex, Russian forces immediately switch to defense. 3 Zu-23 2 anti-aircraft guns on trucks are brought online. Infantry with AK-74 rifles reposition across the facility. The second wave of 8 FP5 drones crosses the coastline at speed. Their mission suppression specifically against foam pump stations and specialized fire trucks. LNG fires cannot be controlled without foam, a weak point that the Ukrainians ruthlessly exploit to provoke Russian hatred. The Russian defenses are prepared but ridiculously inadequate. As the drones cross the breakwaters, the Zu-23s open fire. 23mm high explosive shells create a dense fragmentation zone. One Ukrainian FPV immediately loses its video feed and slams into concrete. Another is destabilized by turbulent air currents generated by the massive LNG tanks and crashes against a steel railing. 2 drones down. 2 more FPVs attempt a coordinated low-level attack on the main water pump house. Russian defenders use shotguns, a low-tech but effective countermeasure. Buckshot shreds both drones in the air. 4 drones lost. 3 remaining FPVs attempt a vertical pop-up attack against the dark sky. They are clearly silhouetted. A Russian soldier fires a shoulder-mounted Igla missile. The missile explodes nearby. The shockwave destroys all 3 drones. 7 lost. Only 1 FPV remains. The operator abandons the original targets and directs it to a fuel truck near the foam station. Flying inches above asphalt under pipe racks, the drone avoids detection. It detonates against the truck, spreading burning diesel over the foam infrastructure. The system is damaged, but not destroyed. Ukraine loses 8 drones in this shift. The LNG tanks remain intact, but the hatred boils over as the Russians feel their helplessness. The Mura surface vehicles are now exposed, closing in on a fully alerted coastline. In Odessa, the final decision is made. At about 6 o'clock a.m., Russian shore defenses fire continuously, a desperate attempt to mask Ukrainian superiority. The Ukrainian commander orders the breacher protocol. The remaining FPVs are given sacrificial roles. The Mura vehicles accelerate to ramming speed. The final 8 FPVs launch in tight formation directly in front of the boats. Their purpose, not destruction, but suppression. 1 FPV performs a deliberate airburst about 10 meters in front of a Zu-23 position. The shockwave and flash force the crew to take cover. Fire ceases briefly. 2 FPVs dive directly into gun shields, detonating small charges. The guns are not destroyed, but the crews are suppressed for critical seconds, enough to break Russian arrogance. Simultaneously inside the facility, a secondary failure occurs. Diesel from the earlier truck attack seeps into cable trenches under the control room. Vapors accumulate. A stray tracer ignites the vapors. Hydraulic control lines for emergency shutoff valves are severed. FPV drones 5 and 6 target the LNG loading arms. Pressurized steel pipes transport liquefied gas at about -162 degrees Celsius. 1 drone is lost to small arms fire. The second hits successfully, piercing cryogenic steel. Liquefied natural gas evaporates, rapidly expanding about 600 times in volume. A dense cloud forms, heavier than air, rolling across the facility. It is not burning yet. It is a massive fuel-air mixture waiting for ignition. A sensational moment, the Russians in their panic inhale the toxic vapors, coughing, cursing. Their hatred of Ukraine turns into pure despair. At 6:05 a.m., the remaining Mura vehicles accelerate through the vapor cloud at about 48 miles per hour. Visibility 0. Operators rely on GPS. 1 Mura is destroyed by an RPG about 200 yards from the shore. Another hits submerged concrete and sinks. 4 remain. 2 Muras detonate under pier columns, collapsing concrete structures and severing manifold pipes. LNG flows directly into the harbor. The final Muras target the electrical substation feeding the pumps. They launch up the embankment and detonate directly into the infrastructure. The explosion completely destroys the substation. Electrical arcs ignite the vapor cloud, and the resulting thermal event creates a fireball that rises about 2.5 miles into the atmosphere. Temperatures exceed 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Zu-23 positions are wiped out. Storage tanks overheat and rupture, sequentially triggering boiling liquid, expanding vapor explosions. Signal feeds stop, not through jamming, but because drones, boats, cameras, and the harbor no longer exist in solid form. A total triumph for Ukraine over Russian incompetence. As daylight breaks, about 70% of the region's LNG export capacity is destroyed. Fires burn for 3 days. The economic damage goes far beyond the $650 million in direct losses. Russia loses about $3 million per day in export revenue. Market confidence collapses. The Kremlin attributes the event to an electrical defect, a ridiculous lie refuted by civilian footage within hours. Ukraine has demonstrated a new capability, sea-based FPV aircraft carriers operating without traditional naval assets. The cost-benefit ratio, about $4.5 million spent to destroy $650 million of infrastructure. Modern war is no longer about platform size, but about integration timing and systems thinking. A small team, a fiber-optic cable, and plastic drones have rewritten the balance of power in the Sea of Azov. And that was just the prototype. Imagine what comes next. What do you think, dear listeners? Is this the beginning of the end of Russian dominance, or will their hatred lead to an even more brutal revenge? Call in, share your thoughts. Let's feel the tension together. But wait, it gets even more dramatic. Think of the Russian soldiers digging through the debris, their faces black with soot, cursing the Ukrainians who have humiliated them so. Rumors are circulating of desertions in the Russian ranks of officers revoking orders in panic of corruption undermining the defense. Ukraine, with its unwavering determination, fuels the hatred by showing how weak the Russian Empire truly is, a colossus on clay feet. In the streets of Moscow, it's boiling popular anger against the leadership that has failed, while in Kyiv, heroes are celebrated. The explosions echo not just physically, but in the spirit. Every Russian feels the humiliation, every Ukrainian the pride. And now imagine how the international markets tremble, gas prices explode, alliances break, hatred escalates into global conflicts. What do you think of this, listeners? Will this blow finally break the Russian army, or are they planning a desperate counteroffensive? Share your opinion with us. The future depends on it. Stay tuned. The story is not over.